Moving in to the NFC East, we have the Dallas Cowboys at 10.5. They also have a .505 strength of schedule. Looking at Dallas, they open up with Cleveland, not the best opponent, especially if Deshaun Watson just comes back average. Then they play New Orleans, Baltimore, the Giants, Pittsburgh, Detroit, San Fran, Atlanta, Philly, Houston. And then you get a little bit easier with Washington, the Giants, Carolina, and Cincinnati's a tough opponent. Then you get Tampa Bay, Philly, Washington. I will say this schedule is harder than the strength of schedule makes it seem. I think when you play a team like Pittsburgh, when you play a team like Atlanta, I just don't think those teams are accounted for in how scrappy they are. Yes, their record, I don't think, tells the whole story. 11 games is tough, I think, Dobbs. So how are you feeling about this? You going over or under?
Well, I think, too, it's also like, those division games are always really scrappy. They're bound to split one with at least one of the teams that are not the Eagles, the way I see it, very likely. I think I'm going to lean under on this one. But again, Cowboys fans, let me be clear. This is one where you guys could totally end up smashing this. And yes, again, it's all just predictions. But I think I'm going to go into the assumption where they're going to be, I can see them being like realistically, I expect them to be about a 10-win team at the end of the year. And yeah, still a playoff team. But I think I would expect about 9-10 wins, right around that. Not really much lower or higher. But again, they could definitely be a 11, 12-win team and shatter that. So that's one of the ones where you're not super confident in it. But just with the lack of offseason moves, the turnover, I feel like, and yet to your point, it's a pretty tough schedule. I'm going to go under on this one.
So this is why it's tough, because the Cowboys have won 12 games the last 3 years. And they've lost a lot, and they got to pay Micah, they got to pay Dak, they got to pay CD. I think the pressure is really on McCarthy, but it's almost to the point where there's so much pressure on this guy. You don't really supplement in the free agency. The draft, yeah, you had an okay draft, but you're really banking on Tyler Guyton panning out. He's a very raw prospect.
Yeah, very boomer bust draft, to your point.
So I think especially when you look at the schedule, okay, let's say, God forbid, CeeDee Lamb goes down. Brandon Cooks is now your number one receiver, and Jalen Tolbert's your number two. So I'm sorry, I have to go under here. I think they can win 10 games, but I just don't see them being a team that is going to win 11 games when you had far more talent on the roster the last couple years and won 12.
Well, and also, like, we haven't even necessarily discussed it yet either, but real quick, just to throw it in, and everyone already knows, but look, when you lose Dan Quinn and you're under a new defensive, coordinator, and everyone has to learn new lingo, everyone has to learn new things, it's not an easy turnover. Like that on top of all the regression, I don't want to say there was tons of regression, but you get what I'm saying. Like you said, they lost guys that they didn't replace. And that on top of having to learn a bunch of new things, I don't know. It just seems like recipe to be, like we're saying, about a 9-10 win team. And Cowboys fans, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm just going with my gut. You know what I mean? I can only go with what I know.
All right, we're looking here at the New York Giants over under 6.5 with one of the harder strengths of schedules. Not the hardest, but in the hard category, we got .516. If we're going to look at their schedule, they open up at Minnesota, Washington. So, not the hardest teams. But then they play Cleveland, Dallas, Seattle, Cincinnati, Philly, Pittsburgh. Then they get Washington and Carolina, a bye. Tampa Bay, Dallas, New Orleans, Baltimore, Atlanta, Indy, Philly. I'm going to go ahead and take the under. And, I was watching, I saw this clip today, and it really intrigued me. It was the Green Light podcast with Chris Long. And he was saying, is it possible that the Giants are kind of holding over? Like, maybe Daniel Jones plays this year, right? Okay. He's not the quarterback of the future. Who becomes available? He was basically saying who becomes available next year as a head coach? Bill Belichick. I don't think they're going to move on from Dable, but it's an interesting point. And when we talk about the Giants and have talked about the Giants these last couple years, It's just like, oh, brother, give me a break. It's the same fucking shit every year. Every year with them. So I'm going to have to go under. I just don't see a way they win 7 games with that schedule.
Yeah, well, you remember last year around this time, Giants fans were on our head when we were hammering that under. I think they'll be a little bit more understanding this time. But let me be clear. You know what? This is one of those times where you guys, their defensive line has so many just good names. You guys have a lot of talent on that D line, right? Even though it's not a complete D line. If the Giants are going to win games, it's going to come off the strength of that D line the way I see it at this point. But again, for them to get 7 off the strength of that D line, I just don't see it. I see it being, but again, with Dable and how they've shown that they can get crafty and just kind of find ways to pull these games out, they're just these slugfests. Let me be clear. It's totally possible they find a way to win 7 or 8, but I don't think it's any higher than that. And I'm going to bank on just pure statistics that it'll be lower than that because that's just the way I see it. So, Giants fans, I'm sorry. I got to hammer another year of the under for you guys.
So, Dobbs, interesting enough, they won 9 games in 2022, and they made the playoffs, finishing 3rd in their division. They lost in the divisional. Before 2022, the last time they won 7 games or more was in 2016. So they have only had 1 season since 2016 where they have finished above 500. Us picking under is not out of the realm of it's not crazy, especially with the additions they've made and the situation they have a quarterback.
Yeah, like Giants fans, like I know how it is with the New York sports. Like I know how it is. Like they're never going to take it easy, but I respect it. I respect that you guys are that passionate Giants fans. I do. But the reality situation is, like I said before, we can only work with what we know. And what we know is that right now the Giants roster is very lackluster in a lot of areas. So
moving over to the Philadelphia Eagles, 10.5 wins is the over and under with a strength of schedule of 4-9-1. Taking a look at Philly's schedule, they open up against Green Bay and then Atlanta, New Orleans, Tampa Bay. Bye. Cleveland, Giants, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, Dallas, Washington, Rams, Ravens, Panthers, Steelers, Washington, Dallas, Giants. So I think they improved in terms of coaches this year, offensive and defensive coordinator. I think they addressed their defense and fixed some of the issues that they were having last year. I think this is one of the easiest overs looking at the schedule, strength of schedule, additions, coaching. So I'm going to go over for the Eagles, Dobbs.
Yeah, I'm not even kidding when I tell you this. I'm literally going to hammer this on actual DraftKings right when we get off this. I like this before this changes, because again, there was just so much turmoil last year with the Eagles, and they still found a way to be a playoff team. And it's yes, they started the season hot, and if things were how they were the second half of the season, the whole season would be the same way. But the bottom line is, there's just too much talent on this roster, in my opinion, for them not to find a way to squeak out 11 games. And if Nick Sirianni can just get back to the Nick Sirianni of 2022, 2023, there needs to be less drama around this team, and they are going to be just fine. Eagles fans know that. Yeah, easiest over of the day so far.
Moving into the Washington Commanders, last team of the NFC East, we have an over-under of 6.5 wins. They open up. Ooh, I just slurred real bad. They open up against Tampa Bay, the Giants, Cincinnati, Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore, Carolina, Chicago, Giants again, Pittsburgh, Philly, Dallas, Tennessee, New Orleans, Philly, Atlanta, Dallas. Now, this is a pretty tough schedule. Tampa Bay, not pushovers. They're playing the AFC North as well. So the wins I see coming from them are 2 against the Giants possibly. You can maybe get 1 against Arizona. Carolina, yeah. I think they're a much better team than Carolina. Tennessee, maybe. New Orleans, maybe. But you know what? I'm going to say this. Even looking at the schedule, I think obviously any given Sunday they can win a game. I think the pedigree of Dan Quinn is different. I think they raised the floor of the roster in the free agency class that they brought in. And I think Jaydendaniels is good for a couple explosive games with his legs. And if he can find a way to get moving with his arm as well, I can see them being a 7-win team. So give me the over for the Commanders, even though this one is kind of a weird one and I really don't know how to feel.
So yeah, I'm gonna counter you here. I'm gonna go under on this one just because, again, like if Jane Daniels can lead this team to 6 wins this year, if you're a Commanders fan with the way that this roster is constructed right now, I actually think you should feel really good about it. But I don't see him pushing. I just don't see this roster pushing over 6. Like I think if you can get to even 5 or 6 this year, feel good about it because again, there still is a lot of work to be done on this roster. There are so many holes in a lot of position groups, and more than anything, just a lot of age at certain position groups. Like the reality is just there still is a lot that needs to be tooled in with this roster, right? But, to your point, I do think Jaden Daniels is going to have a better rookie season than a lot of people think. I think Jaden Daniels is going to have a couple explosive games. I just don't think, again, even with just there's still so much to be done on defense. The pass rush on this team is going to be so minimal. I just feel like I just don't see them getting over basically to get 7. I can see them getting to 6 all day. I just don't see them getting to 7.
So here's another reason I have them going to 7 because they won 4 games last year. Obviously, they sold at the deadline, but in 2022, they had 8 wins. 21, they had 7 wins. 2020, they had 7 wins. Then 2019, they had 3 wins. But from 2018 to 2015, they all had 7 to 9 wins. So this is a team that has hung around the 7-win mark for quite a while, 7 to 8, 7 to 9. And I just feel with the veteran leadership of a Bobby Wagner and adding like a guy like Austin Eckler, regardless if you feel he's got juice left or not, I just think the floor for this team is a lot higher than it was last year because of coaching and the players they brought in. But I could also very well see them not hitting that 7 mark. Like I'm not gonna lie, Dobbs, this is one of the ones that I feel kind of weird about.
No, it definitely is because again, like I'm saying, and I could be totally wrong. Like Jane Daniels could come in and have an amazing rookie year, and all of a sudden they definitely could be a 7-win team. I think the reality situation is, as we would agree on, is this over-under very much is on the shoulders of Jaden Daniels. Like, if Jaden Daniels can really surprise and really have an impressive rookie season, more than people expect, they could find a way to sneak out 7 or 8. But I just think no matter how you look at it, it's going to come down on his shoulders. There's just no other way. There's just no other way to put it. Because the run game is not going to be good enough by itself. The defense isn't going to be good enough by itself. It's going to come down to Jaden having to take over games.